There are bran cakes in the glove compartment. Oh.
People used to ask me in the beginning of this pandemic, how are you doing? How are you coping with it? Understandably, it was very new for everyone. Nobody really knew what to do. We didn't really know how to handle the situation that's now been forced on us. And it's funny because, nowadays, people don't really ask you that anymore. This has really, truly become the new normal. Everyone kind of gets the gist. We know what we're supposed to do. We know how to manage it as best as we can. But it's interesting, as we progress further and further into this new future we're in, and as we sort of stray away from our old way of living, some of us, I think, are having a very hard time coming to terms with that. And it's interesting because I was reading this article on The Atlantic by a journalist named Ellen Cushing. She talks about how, this pandemic has really started messing with people's brains and changing us psychologically in ways that we didn't really predict early on. For example, she claims that she's been, forgetting a lot of the little things, walking into the kitchen and forgetting what she walked in for. I mean, we've all done that, but it seems to be more and more frequent for her now. Sometimes she can't grasp onto a word or a name. She started asking herself simple questions that she would have known had she had been, in the time that we all remember, the old days. And she finds herself not being able to answer those questions. And this is something I think a lot of people experience. For me, I actually, it's weird. I've always kind of been like one step ahead of everyone else in the pandemic, and I think that that's both a good thing and a bad thing. For me, stuff like this started happening around, summertime. I think, midsummer, maybe July, August. I was definitely going through a rough patch. Because I realized, it just felt like, my God, this is never going to end. She talks about other people as well who sort of experienced some of the things she's going through. Like a 19-year-old student from Ireland who struggles to, do regular tasks like remember how to swipe her bus pass or pay for groceries, or just very simple stuff that, we used to just not even think about doing. I think for me, I've always just sort of been okay with the way things have gone with the pandemic. In the beginning, like I said, towards the middle, it was very difficult. People were going out during the summertime and trying to replicate normalcy as much as they could, and it failed miserably. And I knew it would. I just kind of had the feeling like, I'm not going to go out and try to relive last summer this summer, because they're two totally different summers, both culturally and societally. I don't think societally is a word, but you know what I'm saying. And I think the proof sort of shows itself in this Christmas we went through, this last Christmas, and pretty much all of early winter. We went through it. It was miserable. The cases skyrocketed. We had tons and tons of deaths, tons and tons of illnesses, hospitals full to their capacity in many, many parts of the country. And I think that's when people really started to realize, and now they're really feeling the effects of it. This is not time for us to sort of mess around with this and pretend like we're living in a world that we're familiar with. We're not. Now, I had come to that conclusion pretty much right around Christmas time, when everything was falling down. But I think a lot of people are really sort of taking a much longer time in realizing this. A neuroscientist at UC Irvine claims that we're all walking around with a sort of mild cognitive impairment, and that might be true. For me, I know I was certainly experiencing a lot of memory loss. I wasn't remembering people I knew. I wasn't remembering events that happened to me that I would hold on to me, whether they were, traumatic or whether they were very dear to me. There was a lot of memories that I had, and they really helped me define who I was. And when I didn't have those memories anymore, I really started losing myself very quickly. And I think that was something that produced a great deal of anxiety in my life. Very stressful situation. But now, I don't know. I don't know if I've adapted to it, or if I've just moved on, if I've found a way to cope with it easier. But these days, I'm not very bothered by the pandemic. I'm just doing my own thing. I live my day in, day out, like I would if I had a routine. With a normal routine like a job or college. Now, there's some things that have changed that I really wish didn't in my life. I know I have a hard time with schedules. I mean, I always have, but now I kind of have the free will and the free reign to sort of be as procrastinating-ish as possible. I always, wanted to be a procrastinator, and now I can do it with reckless abandon, with no concern for my well-being. And it shows, if you can't see it because I've hid it very well. That if you look behind me in my room, it's an absolute disaster. It looks like a tornado hit this place. And that's because I just haven't been taking very good care of myself and of my environment. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that there really is no need to at the moment. There's no urgency, there's no rush, there's no need to be disciplined. All of the discipline that we have now, we have to have it from ourselves internally, and I don't have any internal discipline whatsoever. People have complained about it being sort of very heavy, the situation that we're all in, that we're waking up and just going through the motions, living our day in, day out with no real change, nothing exciting, and no hope for the future. The funny thing is that's really what I've experienced, and I'm not being, sarcastic. This is not a bit. I'm serious. I have been experiencing that since I was a teenager, and since my anxiety started getting really awful. It's weird. I think that my anxiety has sort of paved the way for me to handle this much easier than other people can. A lot of people are sort of struggling with this idea of, hey, I'm going through the same exact thing over and over again, and it feels like there's no way out, and there's never any change. And I'm just thinking to myself, that was your life before this. And if it wasn't theirs, it was definitely mine, because my life just felt like stagnant 24/7. So the stagnation that I feel with this pandemic isn't any different to me than the stagnation I felt any other time of my life. A lot of people say that they really miss crowds. They miss going to, the mall, right? They miss, going and being around people for a long period of time. And I hated that. I really, really, really hated that. I hated going out to places with a lot of crowds. And I think that part of that also comes from my anxiety. I think that it's really weird that going through this, my anxiety, it must have shaped me in a lot of ways that I didn't realize, because a lot of people are really struggling with the social aspect of this, and I'm fine, man. I'm chilling in my room, and I'm good. I've got my close friends. We talk to each other on Zoom. Sometimes we see each other in person. But outside of that, I don't really need much else. And I recognize that that's me personally, right? Like, for me, this really isn't a big deal in terms of trying to adapt to a new society that is much more afraid of itself and afraid of individuals within it. And I recognize that that's me, that's not everybody. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, I don't understand the problem. It's not a big deal. Get over it. So I feel you guys. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is just to tell you how I'm experiencing it. I think I was always a bit agoraphobic. I think the pandemic has made it worse now for me. And I think that's another thing that's going to be hard for me to overcome, is the fact that, now when I go out, I'm even more afraid than I was before. I don't like being out for long periods of time. It makes me feel very uncomfortable to be just out and about, even in simple places like going to the grocery store. I hate it. I hate going inside. I hate running errands with people. I hate just being anywhere that requires me to be next to strangers. Because before, there was sort of this irrational fear, There was no reason for me to be agoraphobic. There's really no reason for me to be bothered by people around me other than, I'm an antisocial jerk. But now there's a reason to be scared. And I think that's something that we're all experiencing. I think the scariest thing in all of this is, as somebody who's gone through pretty severe anxiety and panic disorders for most of my life, it's very strange and scary, really scary, to see that the numbers in this country have quadrupled in terms of anxiety disorder, in terms of depressive disorder, and all of that quadrupling came pretty much around last year. That's really when it hit, of course, and that's naturally because that's when COVID started. And yeah, it's scary. It's really scary to see people going through the things that I've gone through for so many years, and now it's almost a social phenomenon where so many people are dealing with it. And I don't have any advice to give them. That's the worst part too, because everyone's anxiety is different. You know, that's one thing people don't understand, is that we all experience it very differently. But at least with the vaccines coming out, you know, it's giving people hope, and I think that that's a good thing. I think a lot of this anxiety that we're experiencing as a society is going to be very temporary. There's going to be some long-term effects, like sort of that agoraphobia that a lot of people are going through. Not just me. People are really going to have a hard time adjusting to, you know, the old ways, because now we've adapted to the new ways. I think people are really going to struggle with trying to make schedules, trying to keep a job, trying to make sure their life is on track all the way through. Or if not people, then definitely me. I'm going to have a very hard time with that. I mean, I always did, but now it's even worse. Now it's going to be very hard for me, I think, to get my ass back in check and get my life together. But if you're experiencing anxiety about this, please reach out to somebody, you know, talk to somebody. I will leave a link, a couple links actually, in the description, and you can click on them if you're feeling that you might be reaching a state of crisis where you really feel like you have no one else to turn to, or you have no other way of expressing yourself. Go to those links, call some numbers, do what you need to do. I'm also going to leave a link to Ellen Cushing's article on The Atlantic. Definitely give it a read. It's really well written, and she does a good job sort of wrapping it all up in a very positive, optimistic light. Thank you guys so much for listening to this. I know it was a bit of a ramble for a while there, but if you're curious as to how I'm dealing with it, fine. I'm fine. If you're not fine, that's very serious. You know, do what you need to do to better yourself. These are really, really strange times we're living in, guys, but you're going to get through it. I guarantee it. You are going to get through it. We're all going to get through this if we work together. I know at the end of it all, when we come out of the tunnel, you know, we're all going to be human again, and it's going to be awesome.